Welcome back to the Pig Trail Show. What's up, everybody? Got Tye Richardson joining us now. And of course, we introduced our partnership with ESPN Arkansas last week. And so Tye joining us this week to talk about some of the biggest news happening on the Hill. And look, it started today, right, Tye? You've got Jermiel Ashley announced fired by Sam Pittman this morning. It kind of shocked me when I read that news this morning. And then I talked more to our Otis Kirk, and he talked about how recruiting was a big part of it. And then I
Mhm.
wasn't surprised anymore. We saw that Sam Pittman let go two guys last year because of issues with recruiting. He takes it seriously.
Yeah, and the that part is something that I know that Otis has talked about in several. You ask anybody that covers recruiting for this university, it is a big deal. And for this upcoming class right now, Alyssa, to be a top five in the country, number two in the SEC, that is incredible. Not to say that it's going to stay that way, but anytime you see something like this, that's where immediately you have to look to. The defensive line, I know they were able to bring in Markel Udsey, Trey Williams, and John Ridgeway in the offseason, which we all know became starters. But that's an issue. You look at this past recruiting cycle and just what they need. That is still an issue of concern. I know Sam Pittman said that he kind of wanted to retain and do his best to retain all the 10 assistants, but it looked like this was a decision for him. I don't know when we're going to get a chance to talk to him next, but I would guess he would probably, I don't know if he would say that, but I think that's where we're all leaning based on what we know about his philosophy here at Arkansas.
Yeah, I think you're right. I was talking to a friend of mine who's an Arkansas fan, and we were talking about this news, and he immediately said, "Go get Big Al Davis." Of course, was a guy who
Al
was here
Davis,
for a while. That would be fun to bring Al Davis back to the Hill.
man. Yeah, I don't know where they're gonna go because kind of like you before we popped on, we this kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, we've got a bunch of things to talk about in this conversation, but
Yeah.
this was not something I expected for us to touch on
Mm-mm.
today, and it just kind of came as a blur. But it's good for us, right? Because
Right.
there's not really. I think you and I understand this. There's not really an off season anymore. I know
Yeah.
we have basketball and baseball, but with the transfer portal, NIL, our football dialogue, our conversation is ongoing, and so this news is just not to belittle Coach Ashley getting let go, but this is just a kind of another big tidbit that we get to hit on this week.
Yeah, we're talking to Otis Kirk earlier today too, and he was throwing out some names about defensive line coaches that could be a possibility, and of course he's like, you just never know with Sam what direction he's going to go, and he said at Orgeron and completely kept. I mean, nothing is off the table. Wouldn't that be wild?
Can you imagine Ed
Wouldn't that be
Ogeron?
wild?
So he was a GA
Yeah.
back when your
Uh,
own Mike Irwin
yeah,
was still doing television, and Mike has a fantastic
he
story
does.
where he's like, "Coach said cut it," and Mike's like, "What?" Coach said cut it. Lou Holtz didn't want any filming or anything. I remember Mike telling me
Yeah.
that story. I was dying, but can you imagine the uproar if somehow, some way, Arkansas decided to hire Ed Ogeron
Yeah.
as their defensive line coach?
It, it
Recruiting, you want recruiting coach,
yeah.
Sam Pittman? It'd be there like that.
Yeah, it would be wild. Not saying it's gonna happen, but man, just I guess stay tuned. We don't know what's gonna happen. All right, we're gonna keep talking football, and of course, KJ Jefferson announcing he had surgery a couple days ago. That kind of surprised all of us too. It was like, what do you mean surgery? I guess he's had a knee thing that's kind of been bothering him all season long, and then it makes you say, wait a second. We saw a kind of injured KJ Jefferson. That makes things a little bit more impressive with what we saw with KJ this year.
Yeah, and I don't want to get into the weeds because neither you and I went to even a day of medical school. But the
Hmm.
minor, when you see minor arthroscopic, like cleaning up stuff, it doesn't worry as much. As someone that's had an ACL tear, anytime I hear about knees, it always worries me a little
Hmm.
bit. But for the kind of treetop version of what we've heard being reported, this doesn't seem to be as big of a deal.
Hmm.
And you want to get your guy as healthy as possible because, Alyssa, I think we were talking about it last time. KJ has the potential to be directly behind Bryce Young for the second best quarterback in this conference next year.
Absolutely, 100%. All right, let's talk about that basketball game yesterday, because Arkansas now win four straight SEC games. That's great. They're 4-3. But again, we continue to see just ups and downs with this team. They were up 20-4 at one point, and then of course they have to go into OT to beat Texas A&M yesterday. What did you think about that performance?
This team is a different basketball team when JD Note is off the
Yeah.
floor. I think there are some inexplicable shots that he takes that just makes you want to pull your hair out as a fan. But the ball movement, the chemistry, I got a little confused and perplexed when there were times that I just felt like and I know the stall ball and the ideals and it's been proven to work, but they just kind of got off the flow of their offense. And Chris Like's last few games does not have a great plus minus, which is kind of a bummer. I hope he gets going. But I saw a team that looked a lot better with JD on the floor. He has the best plus minus of anyone on the team to this point, both offensively and defensively. They are a different team when he's off the floor, and I think it showcased itself down the stretch last
Yeah,
night.
it definitely did. They didn't even have him in overtime because he fouled out, and that's the things where JD needs to know you're the best player on this team. You need to stay in the game. I think
Yep.
Jalen Williams said it last week against LSU. They knew that he had 4 fouls, and he said, "Look, we get you like to steal the basketball and be aggressive defensively. We don't need you to do that right now. We just need you to stay on the court." And speaking of Jalen Williams, I think he's a guy that's really starting to emerge as, giving JD Note a little bit of running for his money on being the best player all around on this team. They've got to find a way to get him more looks in the paint.
Yeah, Jalen had a double-double last night. If not for going out early in the foul trouble, he was 1 rebound shy in the South Carolina game. So that would have been, to my knowledge, I think it's 5 straight double-doubles if he got 1 more rebound against the Gamecocks. And he's just making play after play. What I've noticed them doing, Chris and JD, when he's diving to the paint or they're cutting in, they're finding him a lot more often than they were at the beginning of the season. That chemistry started to pick up a little bit because when Jalen's around the rim, he can finish. He still doesn't. He's not the Kevin McHale. He doesn't have just an arsenal of post moves, but he can finish around the rim. He can make a 12-foot jumper like we saw in a big time moment last night. And he can also knock down a pivotal 3, which he did against LSU this past weekend in Baton Rouge. So this guy's game continues to rise. We saw how great of a player he was at Fort Smith Northside, and then him come on at the end of the NCAA tournament run this last season. Not to mention, this team looked like a shell of itself when he got injured in that stretch towards the end of they lost to LSU in the semifinals and they squeaked it out against a few other teams. When he is on the floor, especially this year, this team is so much better. And I kind of agree with you, Alyssa. As pivotal as JD is to this team, if Jalen was to go out, they really don't have a post presence to back him up right now.
Yeah, they don't. Okay, so I'm going to ask you your opinion about this, and Hog fans might be mad at me with my opinion because it's getting a lot of love on social media. People are so excited to keep showing that Stanley Amude dunk at the end of OT, but here's the deal. Run the clock out. There's no need for that dunk. That was excessive. You give now Texas A&M 1.3 seconds on the clock, and I'm sorry, but that shot was about this far from being in and sending you to double overtime. I feel like cool, it was pretty, the lights accidentally went off and the fireworks went on, but at the end of the day, not a smart heads-up play in my opinion.
Yeah, Stanley could have run the clock out, like you said. And there's a couple things that went down in that play. One, the lights went on and the fireworks went off, which I thought was a technical foul. So
That's
Arkansas
what I
might have
thought.
to, and I got to talk to Tommy, my co-host of Morning Rush, who is pretty in depth as a referee on
Mhm.
the analytics, because that's what I initially said. And I was like, Arkansas about to get a tech,
Mhm.
because that's what looked like Buzz Williams and their assistants were doing this on the sideline. So I was like, oh no, they didn't award them a technical foul, and they ended up. And like you said, that shot was close. The other thing to watch, Stanley's dunk almost got blocked.
Mhm.
Now, at that point, it could have just gone up in the air and the game could have been over. But all you have to do if you're Stanley is either throw the ball up in the air or just run the clock out and the
Mhm.
game's over. I
Yeah.
get in that situation. Your heart's racing, all the adrenaline's going. And to be honest, I probably would have tried to at least make a layup. I can't dunk, but at least go up for a layup. But in that situation, I guarantee you, Eric Musselman pulled him aside after the game, said, Stanley, I'm glad you made the dunk, but here's the smart basketball play that we
Yeah.
have to do in the future.
Yeah, look, it was pretty. It makes really good social media videos and all of that fun, maybe a poster down the road. But at the end of the day, you don't make that dunk or Texas A&M makes that three-pointer to tie it again. Now you go to double overtime without JD Note again. I just
Mm-hmm.
think we're giving a lot of praise to a play that wasn't a very good basketball play, in my opinion. It just looked pretty.
Yeah, and I'll say this. I think Eric Musselman's really good about, even in wins, even in big time wins, he's always going to diagnose and dissect, hey,
Hmm.
here's what we did wrong. And I don't know if he did that publicly with Stanley or did it privately. That's up to him and his coaching philosophy. But I guarantee you something was said. And kind of like what we were discussing before, Arkansas had a chance to really blow this
Hmm.
wide open and end it. I thought there were points in the games like Arkansas is going to beat this team by 15,
Hmm.
and give Buzz Williams and Texas A&M credit, because every time it looked like Arkansas was just going to run them out of the building, the Aggies and A&M fought back, similar to what Arkansas kind of did. It looked like Arkansas was getting it run out of the building in College Station, but Kamani Johnson kind of willed that team in the second half. So credit to both visiting teams in their trips. That was a key victory, Alyssa, because now you're heading conference play, and there's not a tiebreaker scenario that they have over you because you split both in College Station and in Fayetteville.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, a win is a win, and I get it. That's kind of how I felt about how it
Yeah.
ended. And again, that was something where Arkansas could have easily lost that game. If the other things couldn't have gone certain ways, but they win it, and now they move on, and they're trying to make a run of it. So we'll see how that all plays out. Tye, always great to catch up with you, man. Always fun talking Hogs with you. We appreciate your time. We'll see you later.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Alyssa.
Yeah, Pig Trail Show, more after the break.